The bridge of the Imperial flagship Resplendent hummed with a low, bored energy. It was a sound of perfect function, of absolute control. Outside the main viewport, the planet Selva Prime hung like a bruised fruit, its green and blue surface marred by the gray scars of brand-new Imperial mining platforms. The conquest was complete, the pacification routine. For Sensor Technician 3rd Class J, it was just another long, dull watch. His fingers drifted over his console, checking the same numbers he had checked an hour ago. Everything was optimal. Everything was quiet. His mind, however, was far away, lost in the memory of the old pine forests back on his home continent. The silence there was different, full of life and wind. The silence here on the bridge was sterile, heavy with the pride of the galactic empire. He yearned for a simpler noise birdsong, not this endless hum-dot at the central command throne. Captain Dehayan scanned reports from the planetary garrison. A man built like a weathered stone, his face was a map of disciplined service. He felt no particular pride in this victory. It was a foregone conclusion. Selva Prime had primitive energy weapons and brave, foolish pilots in fragile atmospheric craft. They had lasted 17 minutes against the Resplendent's forward batteries. Now, the Empire had another world for its resource ledger. It was efficient. It was the way of things. Sensor contact, a junior officer announced, his voice flat. Unidentified signature at the system's zenith point. It was not there on the previous sweep. Jay's attention snapped back to his screen. A ghost of a reading, a blip that defied categorization. Confirming, he said, his voice slightly tight. He ran a diagnostic, then a deeper scan. The blip remained. It was solidifying. It's real. It's materializing. Captain Dehayan looked up, a faint line of irritation between his brows. A cloaked vessel? Pirates? Rebels? No known configuration, sir, Jay reported, his eyes widening as more data or lack of data streamed in. No energy signature. No drive emissions. No life signs. Scans are bouncing or being ignored. It's just there. On the main viewport, the image zoomed in. The thing hung in space. It was not sleek like Imperial destroyers, nor organic like the alien hulls they sometimes encountered. It was a geometry that seemed wrong, its angles not quite adding up, its surface a non-reflective black that appeared to swallow the light from distant stars rather than shine under it. It looked less like a ship and more like a hole cut into the fabric of space. A ripple of tense murmurs went through the bridge crew. This was not in any manual. Hail it, Dehayan ordered, his voice hardening. Standard first contact protocols. Imperial greetings and demand for identification. The communications officer sent the pulse. They waited. The silence from the unknown vessel was absolute. Not static, not a blocked signal, but a complete and total void of response. Again, all frequencies. Add a visual of the Imperial seal. Again, nothing. The object hung in the void, a silent question mark dot in her data analysis cubby deep within the ship. Mira was pulled from her work on stellar drift calculations by a priority alert. She was a woman whose sharp eyes missed little, her mind a precise tool for finding patterns in chaos. The raw feed from the resplendent sensors filled her screen. She leaned in, her breakfast forgotten. The readings were nonsense. Thermal? Absolute zero. Energy output? Null? Mass? Inconclusive. It was as if the sensors were reporting the absence of a thing, not the thing itself. On the bridge, Grand Admiral Sujin's stern face appeared on the captain's com screen. She had been monitoring from her command citadel 3 systems away. Captain, explain this anomaly. An unidentified object, Grand Admiral. Non-responsive. We are attempting to ascertain its nature. Ascertain? Su Jin's voice was a whipcrack. It is in sovereign imperial space. Send the alert fighter wing. Perimeter sweep. If it does not identify itself, it is a threat. Contain it. Daihayan gave the order. From the Resplendent's bays, a swarm of sleek, dagger-like fighters shot forth. They buzzed around the unknown ship, their own sensors painting it with targeting lasers, their engines bathing it in light. They performed aggressive flybys, crossing mere meters from its strange hull. There was no reaction. No weapons ports opened. No shields shimmered. It was like shouting at a mountain. Scramble a marine boarding pod, Su Jin commanded. We will take physical control. The pod, a sturdy capsule of reinforced metal, detached and maneuvered carefully toward the dark object. It extended a magnetic docking clamp. The clamp touched the black surface and passed through. There was no surface to lock onto. The pod pilot recoiled, reporting a sensation of intense cold and a complete failure of the docking systems. It was like trying to grab smoke. Che watched all this, a knot of dread tightening in his stomach. This wasn't a battle. It wasn't even a standoff. It was an observation. The Empire was throwing its might at this thing, and the thing was not even noticing. He felt a childish, profound fear. It was the fear of something so far beyond your understanding that your actions became meaningless. Myra, in her cubby, was compiling the data from every scan, every fighter pass, every failed docking attempt. She saw a pattern not in what the object did, but in what it didn't do. It didn't react. It didn't retaliate. It simply existed for exactly 47 minutes in one spot, drinking in every scan, every communication pulse, every energy signature the Resplendent and its fighters put out. It was mapping them. Not just the ship, but its technology, its communication patterns, its very electronic soul. It's learning us, she whispered to her empty station. A cold realization seeping into her bones. Back on the bridge. The atmosphere had shifted from tense professionalism to a buzzing, helpless anxiety. Captain Daihayan stood stiffly, his hands clasped behind his back. Every tool, every protocol had failed. They could, of course, fire the main batteries. But against a target that absorbed scans and let docking clamps pass through it, what would that do? He was about to request permission for a tactical strike from the Grand Admiral when Jay spoke up, his voice thin. Sir. Changing. On the viewport, the impossible ship did not turn, did not engage a drive. One moment it was there, a solid blot against the starfield. The next, it was not. It didn't vanish in a flash or a jump. It simply ceased to occupy that particular volume of space. One heartbeat it was, the next it wasn't. The stars behind it winked back into view, undisturbed. The bridge was plunged into a stunned silence, broken only by the ever-present hum. The fighter pilots circled empty space, confused. The marine boarding pod floated aimlessly. Grand Admiral Su Jin's voice broke the quiet, sharp, and clear. Analysis. Now, I want a full sensor log, every byte of data, on my console in 10 minutes. Captain, secure from battle stations. But remain on high alert. The crew jumped into action, the spell broken. But the mood had changed. The boring, confident certainty of the Empire was gone. In its place was a yawning gap of questions. Che looked at his sensor panel. The space where the ship had been was now perfectly normal. It was as if it had never existed. But the memory of that silent, absorbing presence was etched into his mind. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. In her data cubby, Mira saved the final packet from the 47-minute event. The last reading was a burst of layered information, a complex signal the object had emitted in the nanosecond before its disappearance. It wasn't a message. It was a stamp, a receipt. She didn't know what it meant, But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever that was, it would be back. And the Empire, for all its battleships and pride, had just been seen. The silence on the bridge of the Resplendent was louder than any alarm. The crew moved with a stiff efficiency, compiling logs and running system checks, but their eyes kept flicking to the main viewport. The stars looked different now. They felt watched in her sealed data analysis room. Mira's world had shrunk to the glow of her screens. The Empire's official stance, already trickling down from command, was one of cautious dismissal. A sensor ghost, the preliminary report suggested. A rare spatial echo. Mira knew that was garbage. She had the raw numbers. The object had been as real as the ship around her, but it obeyed different rules. Her fingers flew across the interface, pulling data from not just the Resplendent, but from listening posts and scout ships across the fringe. She found the first pattern almost by accident. A tiny energy spike in a deep space monitoring buoy near the galactic rim. It had happened 23 hours before the appearance at Selva Prime. The buoy's scan of the anomaly was fragmented, useless, but its timestamp was precise. 47 minutes. Then nothing. A cold thrill shot through her. She widened her search. She found another. A mining outpost in the Hadean asteroid belt had logged a sensor malfunction for a 47-minute window. No visual, just instruments going briefly, quietly mad. That was 5 days ago. She cross-referenced the locations with the Resplendent's encounter, plotting points on a star chart. They weren't random. They formed the beginnings of a grid. A very large, very precise grid. She requested a priority channel to the bridge. Captain De Hayan's face appeared on her screen, looking tired. "Make it quick, analyst." "Sir, the object we encountered was not the first. There have been at least 6 others. Possibly more. They are appearing systematically, mapping our territory." De Hayan's expression did not change, but his eyes hardened. "Evidence? I am sending the data packet now. The duration is constant. 47 minutes. The scan signatures, what we can perceive of them, are identical. They are surveying the Empire, sir. Every appearance is a data point." The captain was quiet for a moment. "Understood. Continue your work. I will inform command." The screen went dark. Myra knew what that meant. Her findings were now a political problem, not just a scientific one dot in the Imperial Command Citadel on the core world of Cairo. Grand Admiral Su Jin stood before the Imperial Strategic Council. The chamber was vast, lined with holograms of conquered systems. Emperor Han Gil sat on his elevated throne, an old man wrapped in robes of authority, his face a mask of mild disinterest. Su Jin presented the facts, using Mira's data. "This is not an isolated incident. It is a reconnaissance pattern of unprecedented scale and stealth. We must assume hostile intent and mobilize the border fleets. We must be ready." A senior minister, an older man whose wealth showed in his soft hands, waved a dismissive gesture. "Reconnaissance for what? They did nothing. They fled. It is a scout from some timid frontier species, frightened by our majesty. To mobilize the fleets is to show fear. The Empire does not show fear. Not showing fear is different from being blind," Su Jin countered, her voice tight. "This technology is far beyond anything we possess. Their silence is not fear. It is disregard. We must understand what they are doing." Emperor Han Gil spoke, his voice dry as dust. "The Empire spans 1,000 suns, Grand Admiral. It was built by looking forward, not by jumping at shadows. You have one strange event and a few sensor glitches. Do not waste our resources chasing phantoms. Increase scan patrols by 10%. Standard protocol." He rose, ending the audience. The decision was made. Su Jin left the chamber, her jaw clenched. She had seen the look in Captain Daehyun's eyes on the com screen. He was not a man who spooked easily. Something was deeply wrong. Back on the Resplendent, Jay found he could not focus on his regular duties. The memory of the black ship haunted him. He waited for his shift to end and on an impulse went to the data analysis deck. He found Mira in her room, surrounded by glowing star maps. He had never met her, but he recognized the look on her face, a deep, consuming focus. "Technician Jay?" she asked, not looking up. "How did you access logs? And you're the only one from the bridge who's looked at my raw data files since the incident. What do you want?" I wanted to help, or understand. I was the one who saw it first on my scope. It felt, he struggled for the word, aware. Myra finally glanced at him. She saw no arrogance, just a genuine, worried curiosity. She pointed to her main screen. "Look here. I've plotted every confirmed and suspected appearance. Your sighting was here." She zoomed in on the Selva Prime system. "But look at the pattern. It's expanding inward from the galactic rim, hitting key infrastructure points, comm hubs, major nav beacons, resource-rich systems. It's not mapping stars. It's mapping us, our networks, our power." Jay stared at the map. The grid was now clearly visible, a web of points slowly encircling the heart of the Empire. "They're making a picture of everything we are." "Exactly," Mira said. "And the scariest part? The data they took from us during our encounter? I've traced echoes of it. Our own communication streams, our civilian news feeds, even some low-level military channels. They've been subtly altered. There's a fingerprint. Like they didn't just read our data, they tagged it. Their private research was interrupted by a fleet-wide priority alert. Su Jin, acting on her own authority, had sent orders to a handful of ships she trusted implicitly, Captain Daehyun's among them. The orders were simple. If another appearance occurred, they were to observe only. Do not engage. Do not scan aggressively. Record everything passively. She was trying to gather intelligence without provoking the unknown, going against the Emperor's wish to ignore it. Weeks passed. The appearances continued. A farming colony world reported a black moon for 47 minutes. A deep space fuel refinery had a total power loss during the window, which then mysteriously returned. Each event was added to Myra's map. The grid was tightening, becoming a perfect, all-encompassing net. The climax came during a routine meeting Myra was forced to attend at the local sector command. She stood before a table of senior officers and presented her updated findings, showing the now nearly complete grid. "The next logical points for appearance are here, here, and here," she said, highlighting 3 core systems, one of which contained Cairo itself. "The pattern suggests a final simultaneous event to link the entire network. They are not just observing. They are connecting something." An admiral chuckled. "Connecting what, girl?" "You are seeing shapes in the clouds. This is the result of too much data and not enough sleep." As the room murmured with agreement, a communications officer burst in, his face pale. "Sirs, multiple, simultaneous contacts. The signature. It's the black ships. We have appearances at the Lysis Depot, the Cygnus shipyards, the Boran Nexus. And," his voice dropped to a whisper, "in high orbit over Cairo, right above the Citadel." The room erupted into chaos. Orders were shouted. The scoffing admiral froze, his smile still stuck on his face like a broken thing. Mira didn't move. She just looked at her star map, now flashing with 5 new, terrifyingly precise points of light. The grid was complete. The data was gathered. The silent 47-minute survey of the Galactic Empire was over. She looked at Jay, who had accompanied her. No words were needed. The feeling was clear. The test was done. Now they would find out their grade. The galaxy, for the Empire, began to subtly break dot. It started with small things. Aboard the Resplendent, a routine jump calculation to a nearby patrol sector was off by a fraction of a degree. The ship emerged from faster-than-light, travel a full kilometer from its intended exit vector. It was a tiny error, but in the precise ballet of interstellar navigation, it was unheard of. The navigation officer was reprimanded for sloppiness. He checked his math 100 times. It had been perfect. On the core world of K-Row, Grand Admiral Su-Jin felt the problem in her bones. Reports trickled in, each one minor, each one inexplicable. A power grid in a secondary city experienced a brown ghost, a 3-second drop in voltage for no reason. A long-range communications array aimed at a frontier world suddenly lost signal coherence, its laser beams scattering as if hitting an invisible prism. The scientific teams called it localized subspace interference. Su-Jin called it a symptom. She knew, with a cold certainty, that the silent ships and their completed grid were the cause. The Emperor and his court, however, remained blissfully focused on a new tax levy for the outer systems. They saw the reports as technical glitches, the growing pains of a vast civilization. To acknowledge it as an attack would be to admit a threat existed, and the Empire's pride would not allow it. Su-Jin decided to act alone. She summoned Captain De Hyan and the Resplendent to a remote, uninhabited star system designated Omicron 77. It was the location of a failed Imperial research station, a place with heavy gravity wells from 2 neutron stars locked in a slow dance. It was also, according to Mira's predictive models, a high-probability location for another appearance. I am not asking you to fight it, Captain, Su-Jin said over the secure channel, her image flickering slightly. We both know that is impossible. I am asking you to trap it, to hold it still, just for a moment longer than 47 minutes. We need to see what happens when its process is interrupted. De Hyan listened to the plan. It was dangerously clever. They would use a network of gravity generator buoys, left over from the old station, to create an overlapping series of artificial gravity wells around the predicted coordinates. At the same moment, the Resplendent would fire its experimental temporal dilation projector, a weapon designed to slow time inside a localized field. The theory was that the combined stress-immense gravity and altered time would snare the object, like flypaper for a ghost. It is a great risk to your ship, Captain, Su-Jin said, her voice offering no false comfort. De Hyan looked at the schematics. A risk is better than sitting blind, Grand Admiral. We will try. In the Resplendent's data lab, Myra and Jay worked frantically. Their job was to monitor the entire spectrum of local space, not just for the ship, but for any changes in the laws of physics themselves. Mira had a growing theory. They aren't using technology as we understand it, she explained to Jay as they calibrated sensors. They are negotiating with reality, asking it to be different for a while. Our scans bounce because for them, there is nothing solid to scan. Our weapons would pass through because for them, that space is empty. Jay felt a chill. So how do you trap nothing? You don't, Myra said grimly. You trap the space it's borrowing. That's what the gravity wells are for. To make the space itself too heavy to manipulate. The weight was tense. The Resplendent floated silently between the 2 dead stars. 48 hours passed. Then, with no fanfare, the black ship appeared. It was exactly as before, a silent, impossible geometry hanging in the void. Initiate sequence. De Hyan commanded. Across the deployment zone, a dozen buoys flared to life. Invisible waves of crushing gravity shot out, layering over one another, focusing on the coordinates of the black ship. Space itself seemed to warp and bend, the light from distant stars twisting into strange arcs. Simultaneously, the resplendent's main emitter glowed a sickly purple. A bubble of distorted time expanded, enveloping the black ship. On the bridge, monitors showed the object seemingly frozen, its edges blurring. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. The crew held their breath. They had done it. They had caught the uncatchable. Then the black ship reacted. It did not fire a weapon. It did not try to flee. It simply changed the rules. On Myra's sensor screen, the readings went from impossible to actively contradictory. Gravity spiked to infinity, then dropped to 0. The temporal field bubble inverted, becoming a pocket of wildly accelerated time before snapping out of existence. The gravity buoys, overloaded by the conflicting laws they were trying to impose, imploded one by one in silent flashes of light. On the bridge, alarm screamed. The resplendent was caught in the backlash. The artificial gravity plates under their feet surged, slamming everyone toward the ceiling, and cut out entirely, leaving them floating in freefall. Consoles sparked and died. The main lights went out, replaced by the dim red glow of emergency batteries. Dayhind clung to his command chair, his mind reeling. He saw the viewport. The black ship was still there, untouched, serene. It had not fought them. It had simply reminded them who was in charge of physics in this particular piece of space. Then, exactly 47 minutes after it had arrived, it vanished. Not quickly, not slowly. It just was, and then it was not. The silence that followed was broken by the desperate reports of damage. Primary power is gone. Jump drive is offline. Life support on backups. We are dead in the water, Captain. The Resplendent, the proud flagship, was a crippled hull. It had not been attacked. It had been brushed aside. In her dark lab, lit only by the glow of a single emergency terminal, Mira watched the final data stream. She saw the precise, elegant way the unknown ship had rewritten local reality to free itself. It wasn't anger. It wasn't malice. It was the effortless correction of a child's mistake. Her theory was confirmed. They were not dealing with the enemy. They were dealing with a force. A natural law that had decided the Empire's way of being was. Incorrect. J pulled himself through the doorway, a cut on his forehead. Are you seeing this? He asked, his voice shaky. Myra nodded, her face pale in the screen's light. They weren't scanning for military weaknesses, Jay. They were scanning for entropy, for waste, for violent, clumsy use of energy. Our attempt to trap them. It was the most violent, clumsy thing we could have done. We just showed them exactly what they were looking for. On K-Row, Sujin received the scrambled, broken transmission from the Resplendent. It was just 3 words from Dayhind before the signal failed. It changed. Physics. She sat back in her command chair, the weight of the truth crushing her. Mobilization, battle tactics, grand fleets, none of it mattered. You could not wage war against a storm. You could only brace for its impact. The Empire, in its arrogance, had tried to handcuff the wind, and now the wind was about to blow back. The decay began not with a bang, but with a stutter, a flaw in the perfect machine. Aboard the crippled Resplendent, adrift in the silent darkness of Omicron 77, the crew worked to restore basic systems. They managed to get low-level power back. Enough for lights and air, but the ship's heart was still. Its mighty jump drive, a marvel of Imperial engineering, was not just broken. It was wrong. Engineers reported that the containment fields, when activated, generated patterns that made no mathematical sense. It was as if the fundamental principles behind the technology had become slippery, unstable. This was happening everywhere. On the frontier, a patrol cruiser's jump drive misfired by a full light year, spitting the ship into the empty void between stars. On a core world, a city's fusion reactor hiccuped, not with an explosion, but with a quiet, baffling loss of efficiency that engineers could not trace or fix. Communications between star systems became filled with static, not from jamming, but from a strange degradation of the laser carriers themselves. The Empire was not under attack. It was unraveling from the inside, its technological tapestry coming undone thread by thread. In the dim emergency light of the data lab, Mira and Jay watched the reports flood in over the weak, intermittent subspace channel. It was a cascade of quiet failures. "It's the grid," Mira whispered, her voice hollow. "The network they built. It's not a weapon. It's a filter. Or a lock. They've decided our technology is too disruptive, too messy. So they are slowly turning it off." Jay thought of the forests of his home. If you poisoned the soil, the trees would die. The Empire had poisoned the laws of physics with its brutal, clumsy manipulations, and now those laws were rejecting them. "So they are just letting us die?" he asked. "Not letting," Myra corrected, her eyes fixed on a scrolling list of system failures. "Preventing. They are preventing us from causing further harm to the universe itself. We are a dangerous child, and they have taken away our matches." On K-Row, chaos was brewing in a different way. The conquered systems, long held in check by the terrifying might of the Imperial fleet, sensed weakness. News of the strange failures, of the ghost ships, spread like wildfire. Rebellions ignited on a dozen worlds. These weren't fights against battle fleets. They were riots against garrisons, whose high-tech weapons now sometimes failed to fire, whose armored vehicles stalled for no reason. The Empire's control had been a show of overwhelming force. Now the force was flickering, and the show was over. Emperor Han Gil, isolated in his citadel, refused to see it. To him, the rebellions were the main problem, a virus to be cleansed. The technological glitches were an annoyance, a problem for engineers. His advisors, trapped in their own pride, agreed. They needed to show strength, to reassert dominance in a way so absolute it would crush both the rebels and the creeping fear of the unknown. "We will use the Galaxy Breaker," the Emperor declared in a closed council session. The room went cold. The Galaxy Breaker was a forbidden planet killer, a device that tore at the fabric of a star to induce a supernova. It had been built as the ultimate deterrent, never used. "We will destroy the Hydro system. It is the heart of this new rebellion. The energy release will be seen across the Empire. It will remind them of our power." And, he added, a fanatical gleam in his old eyes, such a burst of energy may also disrupt whatever subtle game these phantoms are playing. It will show them we are not to be trifled with. Grand Admiral Su Jin, listening via comm, felt a surge of pure horror. "Your Majesty, that is exactly what they have judged us for. Destructive, wasteful entropy. You will confirm every negative assessment." "Silence," the Emperor roared. "Your fear has made you weak. The order is given. The weapon at Gamma Station is to be activated and fired." It was the last, desperate act of a proud, dying beast. The Galaxy Breaker, a monstrous cannon the size of a small moon, powered up. Its targeting systems, thankfully, still functioning, locked onto the Hydro System star. Aboard the Resplendent, now being slowly towed by tug ships towards a repair dock that likely could not fix her, Myra saw the weapon's activation on the military command channel. She knew what it meant. "He's going to burn a star to make a point," she said, her voice numb. Jay watched her. Will it work? Will the energy blast affect their grid? Myra laughed, a short, bitter sound. "No, it will be the final test, and we will fail." The Galaxy Breaker fired. A beam of unimaginable energy, designed to destabilize a sun, lanced across space. On 1,000 worlds, people watched the live feed, rebels and loyalists alike, holding their breath. The beam never reached the Hydros star dot at the precise midpoint of its journey. At a location that corresponded to a node in the black ship's grid, the beam encountered something. Not a shield. It was as if the space itself had a different set of rules. The deadly energy didn't explode. It was funneled, twisted with a grace that was beautiful and terrifying. It was bent into a perfect, impossible spiral, like water going down a drain. And then, following the path of its own violent intent, the spiral of energy reversed course. It traveled back along the exact path it had come, moving faster than light, faster than thought. The visual feed from Gamma Station showed the beam erupting from the empty space it had just crossed. It struck the galaxy breaker cannon directly. The moon-sized weapon vaporized in a silent flash. Then, without pause, the reflected energy shot towards K-Rho. There was no time to react. No warning. One moment, the Imperial Citadel stood on its mountain, symbol of 1,000-year reign. The next, a pinpoint of light appeared in the sky above it, and then expanded into a white nothingness that consumed the mountain, the city, the continent, and finally the entire planet. K-Rho was not cracked or burned. It was erased neatly and completely from existence. The silent message was deafening. You may not destroy. Your entropy is contained. Your violence is reflected back to its source. On the bridge of the command tug, Su Jin watched the live feed dissolve into static. The Emperor, the capital, the central government, the very heart of the galactic empire, all gone in a flash of cosmic justice. She felt no grief, only a vast, empty clarity. The trial was over. The verdict had been delivered. She opened a fleet-wide channel, her voice calm and final. This is Grand Admiral Su Jin. The Empire is fallen. All military oaths are dissolved. Do not fire upon the unknown vessels. Do not attempt to use large-scale energy weapons. Scatter, hide, survive. It is over. The message echoed through what was left of the communication network. The mighty Imperial fleet, already crippled by the creeping failure of its own tech, simply stopped. Ships drifted. Soldiers put down their weapons. The idea that it held 1,000 worlds by the throat, the Empire, vanished as completely as the black ships did. In the quiet lab of the Resplendent, Jay and Mira heard the Admiral's transmission. The constant, low hum of the ship's systems, a sound they had lived with for years, felt different now. It was the hum of a dying thing. What do we do? Jay asked, looking at the star-filled blackness outside the VIEWPORT. Myra powered down her last console. We find a world without cities, without reactors. We try to remember how to build a fire. The great silence was the most profound change. The constant crackle of subspace traffic, the fleet-wide bulletins, the proud propaganda streams, all gone. The galactic empire had not fallen to thunder and ruin, but to a terrible, quiet subtraction. Its nervous system was severed. What remained was a scattering of confused parts, adrift in a sea they no longer understood. Grand Admiral Su Jin's final order to scatter and survive was the only one that made sense. The mighty fleets, symbols of imperial might, were now liabilities. Their jump drives were unreliable tombs, their weapons dangerous to their own crews. One by one, across the star systems, crews abandoned their capital ships. They fled in life pods, in shuttles, in whatever small craft could still fly a straight line under basic chemical propulsion. They aimed for backwater worlds, for forgotten colonies, for any place that did not have a large energy signature. The Resplendent, barely clinging to life, was no different. Captain Dae-Hyun gathered the remaining crew in the main hangar bay. The air was cold, the light dim. He looked at them, technicians, soldiers, pilots, their faces pale with exhaustion and fear. "The ship is dead," he said, his voice echoing in the vast space. "Its heart was built for an empire that no longer exists. We cannot fix it. We must leave it." He pointed to a row of 8 planetary landers, simple craft designed for troop deployments. "We will take these. We will find a world the Empire forgot. We will land, and then we will see." There was no protest. The fight was gone from them. They moved like sleepwalkers, loading the landers with survival gear, rations, seeds from the hydroponics bay, and simple tools. The sophisticated weapons, the communication gear, the sensor suites, they left it all behind. It was useless weight now. Jay and Mira worked together, packing medical supplies and data rods containing basic survival manuals, stripped of any Imperial technology. "Do you think there are others like us?" Jay asked, securing a crate. "Out there?" "Thousands," Mira said, her breath forming a small cloud in the cold air. "Millions, maybe," all realizing at the same time that everything they knew was wrong. That progress was a trap. The landers detached from the dying flagship, leaving it to drift forever between the stars, a metal tomb for a dead idea. The journey to the chosen world was slow and tense, made on simple rocket fuel. They passed other drifting hulks, dark and silent. It was a graveyard of ambition. The world, listed on old charts as EC779, was a blur of green and blue from orbit. No cities, no energy signatures, no orbital platforms. Just continents of forests, mountains, and wide, empty rivers. As their lander pierced the atmosphere, Jay watched the green expanse rush up to meet them. It smelled, through the hall, like rain and soil. It was the smell of his childhood memory, now terrifyingly real. The landing was rough but safe. The hatch opened, and the crew stumbled out onto grass, under a yellow sun, in air that was almost shockingly sweet. They stood for a long time, just breathing, listening to the alien buzz of insects and the call of strange birds. The silence of space was replaced by the noise of life. The first days were pure struggle. They were Imperial citizens, used to food synthesizers, climate control, and instant information. Now they had to build shelters from fallen branches and woven vines. They had to learn which fruits were edible by watching the local animals. Captain Day Hyan, who had commanded a 1-billion-ton warship, now carefully demonstrated how to sharpen a stick into a useful tool. Mira's brilliant mind, trained for astrophysics, turned to more immediate problems. She devised a way to collect rainwater using broad leaves and hollow logs. She studied the sun's path to plot the seasons. Her data rods were useless here. Her knowledge was now written in the dirt, in the successful snare. In the smokeless fire, she helped build. Che found a strange peace he had never known. His job was to explore, to map the nearby stream, to find clay for pots. The constant, low-grade anxiety of the bridge was gone. The fear of the unknown was still there, but it was a clean fear of a predator in the night, not fear of a silent judgment from the cosmos. He was using his hands, his eyes, his own strength. It was terrifying and deeply satisfying. One evening, as the 2 moons rose, they all sat around the central fire. The flames were small, a victory they had all worked for. Su Jin, who had arrived on another lander days later, sat with them. She was no longer a Grand Admiral. She was just another person, her uniform stained with earth. "We have received no signals for 17 days, she said quietly, poking the fire with a stick. "The last we heard was from a group that landed on an ice world. They were not doing well. Most signals have just stopped. They will learn or they will not," Dae Hyan said, his face weathered already by the sun. We can only control this fire, this shelter. Mira looked up at the stars, now clearly visible without the light pollution of 1,000 worlds. They're still up there, she said. No one needed to ask who. Watching, probably. Making sure we don't try to build a reactor. Making sure we stay. Small. Is that a punishment? Jay asked, staring into the flames. No, Myra said, her voice firm. That's the answer to the question we never knew we were asking. The Empire asked, how much can we control? It answered with noise and fire and conquest until it was the only sound in the galaxy. The black ships. They asked a different question. What level of civilization can the universe quietly support? We were too loud, so they turned down the volume. Not to kill us, to save everything else. The truth of it settled over them, not as a despair, but as a humbling fact. Like the existence of mountains or the depth of the sea. The next morning, Jay and Myra went to the stream to collect water. They used clay pots they had shaped and baked themselves. As Jay dipped a pot into the clear, cold water, he looked at his reflection. He saw a tired man with calloused hands, not a sensor technician. He saw someone real. Do you miss it? He asked Myra. The ships? The data? Myra finished filling her pot and stood, wiping her hands on her trousers. She looked back at their small settlement, at the smoke from the fire, at Dae-Hyen showing a younger crew member how to lash wood together. I miss knowing things, she said finally. But I didn't know anything before. I just had access to data. Now. She lifted her pot, feeling its weight. Now I know how to make this. I know this water is clean. I know that if we work together, we will eat tonight. It's less, but it's true. They walked back towards the shelter. The work was endless. There was a fence to build, a garden to tend, the eternal search for food. It was a life of immediate, simple needs. The Empire was gone. Its glory, its terror, its majestic, crushing weight, all vanished as if it had been a dream. Nothing could have saved it, because it was not something that could survive in a healthy, quiet universe. It was the scream, and the universe had finally insisted on silence. As the sun set, casting long shadows from trees they had not yet named, Jay realized he was not afraid of the dark anymore. The unknown was no longer in the stars. It was here, in the forest, in the next day's work, in the slow, patient task of building a life that made no echo in the void. It was a small life, a hard life, but for the first time, it was their own.